NATO expansion was directly cited by Putin in his declaration of war speech in February 2022 against Ukraine. That has been the constant talking point of Kremlin officials to justify Putin's imperialistic foreign policy, his aggression, his saber-rattling against other countries in Europe. But is that truly the case? Is NATO expanding to Russia's borders truly seen as a perilous threat to Russia? Well, to answer that, we look back in the year 2002. Vladimir Putin was asked at a press conference what he thought about Ukraine's relationship with NATO. And he said this: "I'm absolutely convinced that Ukraine will not shy away from the processes of expanding interaction with NATO and the Western allies as a whole. Ukraine has its own relations with NATO. There is the Ukraine-NATO Council. At the end of the day, the decision is to be taken by NATO and Ukraine. It's a matter for those two partners."
Что касается расширения НАТО в целом, вы наше отношение к этому вопросу знаете, оно не меняется. Украина суверенное государство и сама вправе выбирать путь обеспечения своей собственной безопасности. Не вижу здесь ничего особенного или нечто такого, что омрачало бы отношения могло бы омрачать отношения между Россией и Украиной.
The former NATO chief, George Robertson, said that I met Vladimir Putin 9 or 10 times in the lead up to 2002, and at no point did he raise in a negative way the enlargement of NATO. Not once. I think Putin thought it was going to happen anyway. Putin reiterated that point in 2004, telling the Federal Chancellor of Germany, Gerhard Schröder, that Russia has no concerns about the expansion of NATO from the standpoint of ensuring security. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov repeated the same thing in 2005. He was asked, does the right to sovereignty also mean for Georgian Ukraine that Russia would have nothing against their ascension to the EU and NATO? And Lavrov said that's their choice. We respect the right of every state, including our neighbors, to choose its partners, to decide for themselves which organization they want to join. Even more damning than these early statements approving of Ukraine's relationship with NATO, in April of 2012, Vladimir Putin himself offered NATO a logistics facility on Russian territory to facilitate the transit of military cargo to and from Afghanistan. Putin said that it's in the national interest of Russia to maintain stability in Afghanistan, and he had been supporting the NATO mission there since 2001. Even more incredibly, when Finland and Sweden decided to join NATO in 2022 and becoming members a year or two later, Putin said that that was no threat to Russia, that NATO being directly on his border in Finland was not an issue. After their ascension to NATO and Putin's powerlessness to stop them, he went on to change his standards for what constitutes a threat from NATO, saying that he doesn't have territorial disputes with those two countries, therefore it's not a threat to have NATO there. This severely undermines Putin's cause for war. If NATO encroaching on Russia's borders was the cause for war with Ukraine, then why wouldn't it be cause for war with Finland? So he has to constantly move the goalpost and shape-shift his rhetoric and his narratives and his standards for what constitutes a threat to fit the current situation.
Что касается расширения, в том числе за счет новых членов Альянса, Финляндия, Швеция, у России, хотел бы вас проинформировать, уважаемые коллеги, нет проблем с этими государствами. Нет. И поэтому в этом смысле непосредственной угрозы для нас расширение за счет этих стран для России не создается. Но расширение военной инфраструктуры на эту территорию, безусловно, вызовет нашу ответную реакцию. И какой она будет, мы будем смотреть, исходя из тех угроз, которые нам будут создаваться.
Now in 2025, one of Putin's top generals has flipped the script once again, saying that NATO deploying forces to Finland is a direct military threat that they will respond to with violent force.
Значит, Крым не является никакой спорной территорией. И Россия давно признала границы сегодняшней Украины.
Это были российские солдаты или нет?
Это были местные силы самообороны. За спиной сил самообороны Крыма, конечно, встали наши военнослужащие. Я не скрываю. Конечно, это факт, мы никогда его не скрывали. Наши вооруженные силы прямо скажем, блокировали вооруженные силы Украины, расквартированные в Крыму. Хочу, чтобы вы меня услышали, дорогие друзья. Не верьте тем, кто пугает вас Россией, кричит о том, что за Крымом последуют другие регионы. Мы не хотим раздела Украины. Нам этого не нужно. Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции. Подчеркну, в боевых действиях не участвуют и не будут участвовать солдаты, проходящие срочную службу. И не будет проводиться и дополнительный призыв резервистов из запаса. Поставленные задачи решают только профессиональные военные. Считаю необходимым поддержать предложение Министерства обороны и Генерального штаба о проведении в Российской Федерации частичной мобилизации.
So you can see that all of this deceptive lying and shape-shifting is part and parcel of the Kremlin's foreign policy. 1 minute NATO expansion is no threat at all. 1 minute they want to cooperate with NATO. The next minute NATO expansion is a perilous threat to Russia's security that must be stamped out at all costs. 1 minute they have no interest in Crimea. The next minute it's always been part of Russia. The truth of the matter is that NATO expansion was never truly a threat to Russia, that Putin himself never viewed it as a threat until it became convenient to do so, to use as a political tool to shore up his power base in Russia. Many former Russian officials have said that it is nothing more than a boogeyman, a scarecrow, to rally the people behind Putin.